We strike with the wrath of the righteous!
Okay, episode 2 of Questions Young People Ask. Answers that work, or should I say, answers from an atheist. You listen to the voice of Watchtower and Awakening, Mr. Watchtower, as Norris calls me. Norris is not with me at the minute, because I'm going to try and squeeze this into a smaller space in time. Last one was like 45 minutes, so I'm going to try and condense this, and make it more sort of YouTube friendly, shall we say. Incidentally, if you're listening to this via the downloads from iTunes or Stitcher, feel free to subscribe on YouTube. I'm going to stick some of the PDFs and stuff up as I read through them, but don't worry too much if you don't want to do that. It'll make sense to you because I'll read the documentation right to you. Okay. If you are on YouTube, just have a look in the description bar at the bottom there. You will see all of the links. WatchtowerAwakening.com. All the links are available on there. You can follow me on Twitter at ApostateAwake. You can't follow Norris because he's not on Twitter yet. If this is your first time listening to me, I also do a podcast called the Watchtower and Awakening Podcast, which is also available on this channel if you check it out. So, episode 2, what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with the subject of masturbation. I'm going to be using the Questions Young People Ask literature from jw.org. This is the stuff that Jehovah's Witnesses actually use. You can download it straight from the website, which means they're not only, this is their official stance, because this is officially what they offer you as a resource. It's also what they offer a resource to their own followers to teach their children. The reason I know this is because I was one of those children. So when I was younger, I wish I had somebody around like me to tell me how it was. So here I am. We'll get straight into it. How can I conquer the habit of masturbation? Straight from the offset there, we're calling it a habit, because you're a dirty, filthy sinner who views masturbation like, oh, it's just some kind of drug. Look at you. You've formed the habit. Look at you. You're addicted. You filthy sinner. Anyway, how can I conquer the habit of masturbation? I began masturbating when I was 8 years old. Later, I'm quoting here, this isn't me. I'm not entirely sure what age I was, if I'm honest. I began masturbating when I was 8 years old. Later, I learned God's view on the matter. I felt terrible every time I gave in. How could God love somebody like me, I asked myself. And that's from Louis. This is the equivalent of the Sun newspaper saying their eyes met from across a room. The sexual tension was palpable, said an onlooker. Who's the onlooker? The person writing the story. Yeah, exactly. When, again in capitals, I'm not really sure why they're beginning in capitals. When you reach puberty, sexual desires can become particularly strong. As a result, you might fall into a habit of masturbation. Little asterisk there, we're just going to go down and check that out. This is kind of like a weird little disclaimer almost on an insurance advert. Okay, the habit of masturbation. Masturbation is not to be confused with involuntary sexual arousal. For example, a boy might wake up sexually excited or have a nocturnal emission of semen. Similarly, some girls might find that they are stimulated unintentionally, particularly just before or after the menstrual period. In contrast, masturbation involves deliberate sexual self-stimulation. Wow, disclaimer there. Many would say that it's not a big deal. No one gets hurt, they argue. I guess that's a true story, unless you're into some kind of auto-asphyxiation sort of masturbation where somebody could definitely get hurt. But in general, because it's a victimless crime, it's not a big deal, is it? No one's going to get hurt unless you're doing something that's a little bit awkward. However, there's good reason to avoid the practice, is there? The Apostle Paul wrote, "Deaden therefore your body members," your cock, "Deaden therefore your body members as respects sexual appetite." Colossians 3 verse 5. Masturbation does not deaden sexual appetite, but fuels it. Masturbation does not deaden sexual appetite, but fuels it. There you go. There's a fact there for you. You'll notice that they haven't directed us to any kind of scientific study or any kind of resource that we might be able to check out. No, you don't need a resource. You know why? Because it comes from the Bible, and the Bible is correct. Why? Because God said it, and God said it in the Bible that was divinely inspired. How do we know that? Because the God of the Bible says so. And then what happens is the governing body of the Jehovah's Witnesses decide how to reinterpret that and put it into words and stick it into this kind of format. And then it bounces down the hierarchy all the way to the lowly teenager who is reading this, getting really confused because he's having facts thrown at him that he's expected to swallow whole. Masturbation does not steady sexual appetite, but fuels it. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I'm not willing to give out any kind of factual statement unless I've done my research, and they clearly haven't. In addition, consider the following. Again, consider. The word consider irritates me in these kind of publications because, in addition, consider means agree with this or we will ostracize you. In addition, consider the following. Pay attention to these 3 bullet points. Masturbation instills attitudes that are totally self-centered. For example, when masturbating, a person is immersed in his or her own body sensations. Now, I will take that as a complete and utter plus point. It doesn't mention anything to do with God's attitude, doesn't mention anything to do with religion. What it does mention is the fact that you immerse yourself in your body sensations, and nothing to me could sound more appealing. If you immerse yourself in your body sensations, that is the stuff of life. That's what gives you your humanity. I'm not just talking sexually. I mean, like a breeze on your face, or feeling the sunshine, or jumping in a cool lake, whatever it is that your body can sense because of the sensations that you are experiencing is awesome, is it not? So being immersed in your own body sensations, I'm going to take that as a plus point. Second bullet point. Masturbation causes one to view those of the opposite sex as mere objects or tools for self-gratification. I find this a little bit strange as well, because if you listen to episode 1, you'll realise that it was all about homosexuality. And here it says, causes one to view those of the opposite sex as mere objects. Why? Why just the opposite sex? What about same sex? Maybe you believe yourself to be full-on heterosexual, but maybe while you've been masturbating, you've thought about the same sex. But they don't want to put things like that, because that would lead us to believe that there may be a sexual spectrum. Imagine that. A sexual spectrum of orientation. But no, because it's black and white, because that's how it is in the Bible. The third and final bullet point here is of particular interest, and I'll explain why. The selfish thinking that is instilled through the practice of masturbation can make satisfying sexual relations in marriage difficult to achieve. This is really, really harmful. And if you're a fully fledged Jehovah's Witness and you're listening to this, I need you to understand that what you're doing is just, you're basically scaremongering. That is essentially what it is. This is basic child abuse. There's nothing in this statement that is factual, and if there is anything that in that statement that is factual, there's no referencing, nothing, just Bible says, governing body says, therefore it's true. Okay, if I just break this down, the selfish thinking that is instilled through the practice of masturbation, so they're saying that it's selfish to masturbate without providing any evidence for that, can make satisfying sexual relations in marriage difficult to achieve. Bearing in mind, what they are saying is, if you masturbate, you might find it difficult to please your future sexual partner. And they are aiming this material specifically at young Jehovah's Witnesses who are likely to be virgins and not yet married. So with that in mind, the only sex that these people are probably going to, well, as far as the Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned, the only sex that these people are going to encounter is within marital bliss. The danger with this is they're making masturbation more than a taboo. They're scaremongering. They're creating some kind of fearful fervour about it, saying that you're going to have problems with your sex life, with your future sexual partner in marriage if you masturbate. Nothing could be more destructive and make something that should be part of the human experience more degrading. It's just flat out ridiculous, and I would love somebody to try and counter that point in the comment section. Enjoy. We'll move on. Rather than resort to masturbation to relieve pent-up sexual urges, strive to cultivate self-control. To help you do that, the Bible recommends that you avoid circumstances that might arouse you sexually in the first place. Still, what if you have become enslaved to the habit of masturbation? Perhaps you've tried to stop, but without success. It would be easy to conclude that you're a lost cause, that you're incapable of living up to God's standards. That's how a boy named Pedro viewed himself. When I relapsed, I felt terrible, he says. I thought that I could never atone for what I had done. I found it hard to pray. If that's how you feel, take courage. Your case isn't hopeless. Many young people and adults have overcome the habit of masturbation. You can too. Wow. Thanks for that. Thanks for giving me the power to overcome this habit. Again, we're just throwing out straightforward facts there. You know, we're saying that you could be enslaved to the habit of masturbation. It's important to understand that if you do not have a fear of God because you do not in fact believe that he exists, habit of masturbation just seems plain peculiar because it's part of your human experience, it's part of your bodily functions. Saying habit of masturbation is like the habit of eating. It's just something that you happen to do as a byproduct of being a biological organism that interacts with other biological organisms. It's really not a big deal. It only becomes a big deal when you have been indoctrinated. Okay, so Pedro's saying, when I relapsed, again, trying to instill this sort of drug addiction sort of quality to it. When I relapsed, I felt terrible. Felt terrible for what? He did nothing wrong. I thought that I could never atone for what I had done. I found it hard to pray. If that's how you feel, take courage. You can overcome it as well. Brilliant. Fair play to you. You can overcome it. Dealing with guilt. As already noted, those who have fallen into the habit of masturbation are often plagued with guilt. You know why they're plagued with guilt? Or rather, if you're a young Jehovah's Witness and you're listening, do you know why you might be plagued with guilt? Because they have made you feel guilty for something that you should not feel guilty about. There's no guilt to be had because you're doing nothing wrong. You've been indoctrinated since whenever you were brought into the truth. I'm using air quotes, you can't see them, but the truth. Or maybe you were raised in the truth, as I was. You may feel guilty, but it's because you've been made to feel guilty. There's no chance you would naturally feel guilty about this, unless you believed that there was a God that cared whether or not you masturbated. Without a doubt, being saddened in a godly way can give you the incentive to overcome the habit, but excessive guilt can be counterproductive. It can make you feel so discouraged that you just want to give up the fight. So strive to put the matter in perspective. Masturbation is a form of uncleanness. There you go. You can enjoy that fact from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. Masturbation is a form of uncleanness. It's just said there in black and white. There you go. Fact. Take that home. Again, it's important to understand that young people are reading this, and some young people will be blindly, dogmatically swallowing this whole. By the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society printing this means that it has been given the okay by the hierarchy. And because they are like God's emissaries on earth, they are like the conduit for Jesus. Everything that's in this is factually correct. And if you can try and get your head around the cult mentality of that, everything that they read here, to them, if they are a full-on believer, is factually correct and should not, and is always discouraged from being questioned. That's the reason why they shouldn't look into apostate literature and things like that. Okay. So when it says here, masturbation is a form of uncleanness. Fact. It's obviously not a fact in the real world, but masturbation is a form of uncleanness. Fact. It can make you a slave to various desires or pleasures, and it fosters unhealthy attitudes. At the same time, masturbation is not a form of gross sexual immorality such as fornication. If you have a problem with masturbation, you need not conclude that you have committed the unforgivable sin. The key is to resist the urge and never give up your fight. So they're saying you're going to relapse, occasionally, you may well masturbate, but it's not as bad as having sex with somebody. So, if you're going to give in to your urges, at least just masturbate and be forgiven for it, It is easy to become downhearted after a relapse. Again, you're not on meth. Come on. When that occurs, take to heart the words of Proverbs 24:16. The righteous one may fall even 7 times, and he will certainly get up, but the wicked ones will be made to stumble by calamity. There's nothing calamitous about masturbation that I've ever been aware of. Again, maybe the auto-asphyxiation thing. Incidentally, maybe don't look that up if you're young and you're a Jehovah's Witness and you don't want to see sexually arousing material. A temporary setback does not make you a wicked person, so do not give up. Instead, analyse what led to the relapse and try to avoid repeating the same pattern. That's another ridiculous thing. Instead, analyse what led to the relapse. What led to the relapse? If you find something sexually stimulating, you might not necessarily know what that thing is. There may be no pattern. For some people, the pattern will be seeing a female. Not like any kind of female, but like we're talking about any encounter with something or someone that is arousing to you is arousing to you. You can't really help that. The pattern may be bumping into people that you find sexually attractive, which happens a lot to all people. So get over it. Take time to meditate on God's love and mercy. Doesn't that make you feel cozy? God's love and mercy. We'll go into God's lack of love and his lack of mercy. We'll go into that in the podcast form, but just for now, we'll leave that to one side because we just want to strictly go with the masturbation. The psalmist David, who was no stranger to personal weakness, stated, "As a father shows mercy to his sons, Jehovah has shown mercy to those fearing him, for he himself well knows the formation of us, remembering that we are dust." You'll notice that you have to fear him, be frightened of what he is thinking about you while you masturbate. It's just like, this is a typical battered wife syndrome. It's like, I love you, but you better damn well fear me. Yes, Jehovah takes into consideration our imperfections and is ready to forgive, says Psalms 86 verse 5. On the other hand, he wants us to put forth effort to improve. So what practical steps can you take to conquer your habit? Now they're just accusing you of having a habit that you need to conquer. Fact. Analyze your entertainment. A little joke there for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Analyze your entertainment. Do you watch movies or TV programs or visit websites that are sexually stimulating? I find that a bit silly because even if you deliberately try to avoid them, sooner or later you're likely to see something that is sexually stimulating. That's not your fault, is it? It can just be something that you didn't ever realise you found sexually stimulating, and there it is for you. You can't really help that, can you? It's like one of those one of those adverts in America that's trying to sell you some pills, and it says, "Do you have feet and a head and sometimes eyes that hurt? Do you occasionally get rumbling in your tummy? Do you have 2 hands? Are you somewhere below 7 feet tall and above 3 feet tall? If so, you need this pill." The psalmist wisely prayed to God, "Make my eyes pass on from seeing what is worthless." They say that like, turn away because it's worthless. I am not passing my eyes on from something that is sexually stimulating because it is not worthless. It's worth something. It's worth sexually stimulating yourself for. Force your mind to focus on other matters. That's a sort of typical Jehovah's Witness mantra, that. Force your mind to try and overcome your body, because that's what good cult members do. Force your mind. Doesn't matter about reason and logic and your body and how you interact with the world. No, what matters is that you force your mind to do what the Bible says, no matter how irrational that may seem. A Christian named William advises, before going to bed, read something related to spiritual things. It is very important that the last thought of the day be a spiritual one. What if you find angels sexy? Just a little thought there for you. Maybe it's cool up in heaven. Maybe they've got like silky garments that shows a bit of nipple. Maybe you just get turned on by like human beings that have got wings, if that's how you view angels, which I presume you do, because that's what the illustrations are like. Talk to someone about the problem. Shame might make it difficult for you to bring up the matter to a confidant. You know why? Because you have been made to feel shameful for something that is not inherently shameful. Yet doing so can help you overcome the habit. That's what a Christian named David found. I talked privately with my father, he says. I'll never forget what he said. With a reassuring smile on his face, he said, "You make me so proud of you." He knew what I had gone through to get to that point. No words could have lifted my spirits and determination more. My father then showed me a few scriptures to help me see that I was not too far gone, and then some more scriptures to be sure I understood the seriousness of my wrong course. He said to keep the slate clean until a certain time, and we would discuss it again. He told me not to let it crush me if I relapsed. Just go a longer period of time without giving in the next time. David's conclusion? He says, having someone else aware of my problem and helping me was the greatest benefit. Now, I can't help noticing that because this is for public consumption and things that people can actually just get from the website, it's almost as if they feel a duty of care towards their young people, kind of, because they don't really realise what they're doing is actual child abuse. What they're doing here is they're saying, if you're worried about masturbation, talk to somebody about it. And that may well work in certain families, but the cult mentality being what it is means that taboo topics are usually off the table completely. And even if they're officially on the table, as far as doctrine is concerned and as far as families are concerned, it doesn't mean that the young person wants to approach that subject matter. And if you spend your entire lives indoctrinating them with the view that being sexually active, whether that be actual sex or masturbation, if you view those things as immoral and unclean, which you absolutely do, if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you believe this, you're stigmatizing things and you're making them have negative associations with these things. So they're not going to want to approach the matter. And can you imagine if they're worried about masturbation, but they're also worried about what they're thinking about masturbation? Maybe they're homosexual or somewhere on the sexual spectrum that Jehovah's Witnesses don't seem to think exists. Imagine how difficult it is to talk about a subject of masturbation or the subject of sexuality in general when you have created a climate of fear. Think about that. Okay, that's been Questions Young People Ask, episode 2. The links are below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, I guess you're already getting the links because you're downloading this via iTunes or Stitcher, where I'm also available. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at ApostateAwake. And I will see you next time. Just remember, don't worry too much when you're masturbating because there is no God. But if there is, may he strike me down.